when we engage in questions about our lives, such as, what do I want to do? How do I want to live? How do I want to be? We don't often think about this as being ethics, yet these are very fundamental ethical questions. Yeah. More often than not, ethics is usually thought of as a system of rules, systems of don't-dos. We're all familiar with that. We have, particularly coming from Christo-Judaic backgrounds, we often have a long list. Even Buddhism has a list of precepts which we engage in. And these precepts and what occurs under those precepts, and they're much bigger for monastic communities than they are for lay communities. But those precepts often look like a list of don't-dos. That's all. Yet, they are really, in a sense, kind of fallback options that we go back to when actually I can't discern the direction that I need to take in any particular situation. So if we're talking about the don't-dos, well, let's just take the Buddhist list, the list of the precepts. We don't engage in harm. The first precept is about not harming. Interestingly, of course, it always comes as a rule of training. This is the way it's referred to, as a sikappadam in Pali. Something which is a rule of training. So as a rule of training, as we move through our lives, we try not to harm. As a rule of training, we try not to take what is not offered to us. And we have 5 of these. I won't go into them all, but I think they should be fairly familiar to you, particularly those of you who have been on retreats before. And yet, we can't reduce the notion of ethics to this list of 5 factors. If we try to do that, we lose something which is incredibly important, which is the ways of developing our awareness to bring to the situations that we find ourselves in on a day-to-day basis. We live not just in a changing world, we live in moment-to-moment changing situations. When we're face-to-face with another, that other is often, in a way, asking something from us. What is being asked? Well, the first thing, for example, that one philosopher suggests is, don't hurt me. That's one of the things that they actually say. So non-harm. But, how do we express that sense of non-harm in this relationship, in this particular situation, rather than just as a general rule that I don't engage in harm? Now, in order to do this, in order to engage in this acute, in a sense, reading of the situations, which are always ethical situations, the moment we're with an other, no matter be it in an office situation, in your personal relationships, encountering another person in the checkout of a supermarket, you're engaging in an ethical situation. Often we don't read it in that way. Often we read it in a very, very utility-based way. What does this person do for me? Do they function well or don't they function well for me? Does this person give me what I want or don't they give me what I want? And interestingly enough, when we're engaged in those kind of readings of the situations we're in, we sometimes fall very much, as I say, into that objectification trap where we don't see the other person. We don't see their needs. We don't, in a sense, enter into relationship. And here I mean the ethical relationship with that person. Now, in a way, what I'm telling you is a story about why awareness is necessary. Why this acute development of awareness that we develop in our contemplative practices, in even just a little kind of practice that we've just done. Why do we pay attention to something like, your bum on a seat? or your hands resting one on another, or the clothing touching the body. Now, what's of interest in that? Well, actually, I say everything is of interest in that, because it's actually reading where we are at this moment with what is arising at this moment. And okay, in the big scheme, if we want to say the big ethical scheme of things, it really doesn't matter that much. But actually, in saying that, I think we do ourselves a disservice, because when we come into this moment, replete as this moment is, with all kinds of information and all kinds of things which are being given to us in our experience, how do we make sense of it? Yeah. So holding the mind steady, being able to hold it steady, to focus on just such a simple thing as the arising of a sensation, that this moment is a unique training. It's a unique training to be able to take into our ordinary life. Not to sit here forever and a day with our eyes closed, concentrating on me and what's happening with me, but to open our eyes and to see a world that we're in interrelationship with. And the moment we're in interrelationship with and asking ourselves questions about how do I live, what do I do, where do I go, how do I treat this person, the moment we ask those questions, we're entering into an ethical relationship. Yeah. We open ourselves up into that. And so what we're doing in this training, in this very specific training that we engage in, we could call it, we can call it samatha, we can call it vipassana. These are all, in a way, terms that we find in the early texts, but not used in quite the same ways as they are in meditative traditions now. So we have the sense of gathering the mind. That's samatha, which is calming and gathering, not concentrating. That's one of the words I'd like to banish, actually, is the idea of concentrating. I think of a sort of screwed up mind, all tight, when I think of concentrating. I used to have teachers at school who used to say, concentrate, and you get there and really want to concentrate on something. And that's not what we're trying to do. What we're trying to do is gently gather the mind in. A very good image, actually, certainly one I use in the UK sometimes when I'm teaching, is the image of a sheepdog gathering sheep in, collecting the sheep, rounding them up. You can't have a savage sheepdog because it doesn't do its job very well. It would damage or hurt the sheep. If you think of our thoughts like sheep being gathered gently in, into the fold, again, unifying, that's what we're attempting to do. So that unified mind is a very, very powerful thing to take out into our ordinary life situations, into those, as I say, ethical situations. The moment we're involved in people, with people, and if you take nothing away from this talk other than this, the moment we're involved with people, the moment we're involved with animals, the moment we're involved with the environment, we're in an ethical situation. It requires an ethics of responsibility. And in order to, in a sense, be responsible, we need to be aware. We need to have really started to hone and gather that mind and collect that mind in a way. Now, a collected mind is very useful, but a mind that is just collected, in some senses, has its limitations. We take that collected mind and we apply it in certain ways. Many of you who may have been involved in meditation for quite a long time be very familiar with. We apply it in different ways, often what are called analytic type vipassana meditations, where we apply it, for example, to seeing who I am. Who is this individual sitting here, breathing at this moment in time? Are we with the body? Are we the breath? It's questions about the self and who we are involved in that. So we take it and we apply it in a certain way. And actually, this is what we're doing with this development of awareness, by gathering the mind and then being able to apply that gathered mind in our situations, but not in our situations just in a meditative sense. That's very nice. And we all, and sometimes we really need that. We really need to spend some time away, gathering ourselves together, collecting ourselves, actually. Life as it is lived in the contemporary world scatters us, fragments us, pulls us in all sorts of different directions. Can be your work, it can be your family, it can be all the demands that are there on us in the contemporary lifestyle, which hasn't got easier. I mean, I think most of us must admit that. It hasn't got easier with the development of all the technologies and that we have. Our lives get pulled in even more directions than they often did, say 50 years ago when I began on this path. So we need to, some senses, recollect ourselves. It's interesting that the word sati in Pali has that sense of recollection. Of course, this is the word that usually gets translated just as mindfulness. We're recollecting ourselves, recollecting, remembering what we're doing, remembering what we're engaged in. And what I would like to suggest to you is this is an important factor of taking out into your ordinary life. Where is the test for it? It's not sitting on the cushion. You can have some very nice experiences. You can have some beautiful things happen to you. You can certainly become much more centered and much more calm through these practices. But where it's really going to count, where it's really going to matter, and this is, for me, the important aspect of it, where it's going to matter and where it's going to count is when you take it into your daily lives.